Hello everyone, it's SpawnPoiint and this could be the best OLED gaming monitor that I've ever had. It's ROG's latest 32-inch 4K OLED that supports up to 480Hz, has VRR, HDR, and has a dual mode to switch between 240Hz and 480Hz at the press of a button. It's also the first WOLED panel to have a true black glossy coating, which just looks unreal. So it's called the XG32UCWMG. And today we're going to get this unboxed and take a closer look at what this thing can do on both the PS5 Pro and my RTX 5080, and decide whether it's worth replacing my LG 32GS95UE with. Now any questions you've got, just drop those below and I will try to answer them. Okay, let's start with the unboxing itself. So inside this relatively plain packaging, it comes with pretty much everything we need to get up and running. So we've got this pouch that contains the usual cables like a USB 3.2 cable and a DisplayPort cable. There's also a microfiber cloth for giving that screen a wipe over, a power brick and a power cable, as well as these manuals and stickers that we're never going to use. The stand then comes in two parts. We've got the main arm and the base, but I will talk more about the design of these in a minute. But surprisingly though, there is no HDMI cable in the box, which I think could be a first for me. We then have the screen itself, which we just need to attach to the monitor arm like this, and the base then slots and screws into the bottom like this. Now I am seriously excited to show you the screen on this thing, but before we do that, let's talk about the design. So back here we've got what I would call a gaming focused design. It's got this chunky middle part that houses all of the internals, along with the heatsink and this huge ROG logo. Now this is off by default, but you can turn the LEDs on in the settings for that RGB vibe at night. It's also got the crazy thin frame that we like to see on most OLEDs, and if you ever needed it, a 1/4 inch thread on the top of the stand for your camera or your lights. Now as for the stand itself, in my opinion, this is literally the best looking stand that ROG have made to date. Instead of the large, wide feet, they've gone for a flat metal base this time, which not only looks nicer, but it takes up far less space on your desk. And on the back of the stand, it's got the usual cable management hole to feed your cables through. Oh, and it does come with a VESA 100x100 adapter in the box, if you'd rather use that instead of the stand. Then around the front, we still get the ROG chin, which you can either leave the red LED on, or like I do, switch it off for that stealthy look. Now I know a lot of us do complain about this notch at the bottom, but it's actually useful for grabbing and moving the monitor without needing to touch the actual screen. And then behind that there is a little joystick-like button which you can use to access the menus and settings on the monitor. As for the ports, well, it comes with two HDMI 2.1 ports, one DisplayPort 1.4 with DSC, a USB hub with 4 USB ports, a USB-C port and a headphone jack. So plenty of ports here for your PS5, PC or laptop, and it's great to see a USB-C port on a gaming monitor, even if it's only a 15-watt power delivery. But I think that's enough about the rear. Let's flip this thing around and take a look at that screen. I mean, there is no denying that this screen just looks so good. Now this is straight out of the box with no tweaking of the settings. In fact, I've even still got the energy saving mode switched on at this point. But there's something about that glossy finish that instantly makes this look so punchy. I also like the fact that the bezels are nice and thin, and it looks crazy thin from the side, which I always love to see on an OLED. So as mentioned, this is a 32-inch 4K OLED, and a WOLED panel at that. So we're getting the typical 99% DCI-P3 color gamut, infinite contrast and those inky black levels. Now those are all great specs, but nothing new in terms of what we expect from a 4K OLED in 2025. But what makes this monitor different is that new glossy true black finish to the screen. Sure, we've had glossy QD OLEDs before, that's nothing new, but having a glossy WOLED with this true black coating is something else. Firstly, the colours are so much more vivid that they look deeper and more vibrant when compared to a matte or an anti-glare finish. They sort of pop and look wet with that glossy coating. But it's not just a glossy reflective coating where you're going to see everything in your room. This is giving me a modern OLED TV level of true black, where it's more of a tinted finish. This not only means reflections are the best that I've seen on a reflective screen, but the black levels are not really compromised at all. In fact, I would go as far to say that this has a better contrast and black levels than what you would find on a matte finish, where sometimes those black levels look a little grey under certain lighting, or with QD OLEDs where the black levels can be considerably raised. That's still a downside, and that is why I don't personally like QD OLEDs. So as I'm moving my torch around the screen now, you can see the reflections is of course showing up because this is a glossy screen, but it's not as bad as you might expect. There is literally no haze and no blur at all. It's just a very dark tinted mirror. Now I can easily use this in my room day or night, which was something I was worried about. I don't have to try and manage the lighting in my room in fear of those raised blacks like I get on a QD OLED. And brightness is another huge point for this monitor. So it's still using MLA Plus tech, but it's got a peak brightness in HDR of 1300 nits, and that's in a 1% window. But in a 10% window, it will hit over 700 nits. To give you an idea of how that compares, the monitor that I've been using for the last year is the ROG XG32UCWMG, and that hits around 500 nits at 10%. And other than that glossy finish, this was the first thing I noticed as soon as I turned it on. Now the panel does come with its brightness set to just 80% by default, and I was already impressed. But bumping that up to 100% seriously shows off how good this screen can look. Now my room isn't dark either, I've got 8 ceiling lights on and a floor lamp, and as you can see here, it is still bright enough to see without any issues at all. It's probably worth mentioning as well the text clarity and the sharpness, which is great on here too. Whether you're reading text in a document or the menus in a game, the subpixel layout means we're getting super sharp text and probably a little sharper due to that glossy finish. HDR is on by default too, and having played around with the settings, I found that at least on console, HDR TrueBlack 400 was the best for me. Colours popped while still maintaining the highlights and the shadows. Don't forget though that this does have a custom heatsink too, so it's able to hit the higher brightness level without damaging the screen. And I know a few of you asked, but no, you cannot hear anything when you're running the monitor as it's got a fanless design back here. Oh, and something else worth mentioning is ROG are making 2 versions of this monitor this year. So the one I have here is the XG32UCWMG, but there's also the XG32UCWG. Notice the M is missing. Well, this is exactly the same other than 165Hz at 4K and 330Hz at 1080p. So if you're a console gamer with no intention of playing it on PC, you may as well just go for the slightly cheaper model. Now this desk setup is literally where I game from. It's not a fake studio setup, this is my actual gaming setup. And that means over the last week I've been playing games on here to test out the new screen for real. Firstly, this monitor will play games at 4K at 240Hz, if you've got a game or a setup that supports it. Now obviously my PS5 Pro isn't going to cut it, so we're using my RTX 5080 setup down here. It's got 64GB of RAM and the i9 14900K. Now my go-to for testing pretty much anything these days is Cyberpunk, as not only does it run well, but it hits ridiculous frame rates and it looks so good. So I've gone ahead and enabled the FPS counter on screen, so you should be able to see what the FPS I'm hitting while I'm driving around. And it is amazing how smooth and clear this game looks. Also how sharp and detailed it looks at the same time. Now this kind of brings me back to those inky blacks and that screen coating where you can see that it is clearly reflective, but it's not distracting and doesn't take anything away from the image or the picture quality. Now the XG32UCWMG also supports all of the usual things like AMD FreeSync Premium Pro and is G-Sync compatible, so any games that offer VRR will run smoothly on here with no screen tearing. As I say, this will easily hit 240Hz at 4K in any game that supports it, so for story-driven games or driving games this will be perfect. But then there's also the dual mode feature, and this is what turns the monitor into an absolute beast. One press of a button and it takes it from a 4K 240Hz screen into a 480Hz 1080p weapon. Add in the fact that this monitor has a ridiculously low response time of 0.03 milliseconds, this is shaping up to be a beast of a monitor. Want to play Apex, COD or Battlefield? Well, switch over to the 480 mode and you can play anywhere between 240 and 480Hz. It's almost like you're getting 2 monitors in one here, where you can enjoy 4K for story-driven games, but also the 480Hz for FPS games. Just bear in mind though that the image will obviously take a hit when you're in 1080p on a 32-inch screen, so it doesn't look anywhere near as good as it did in 4K. Now to be honest, there aren't actually that many games out there that offer 480Hz, but there are a few. So games like Counter-Strike, Overwatch and Valorant all do. So if you play any of those and you want to max this thing out, this is the way to do it. And I can tell you now that running games this high is absolutely ridiculous. Oh, and if for any reason you think that 32 inches is too big while you're playing FPS games, there's also an aspect control setting where you can reduce the size of the screen to be a little more focused. So this is 32 inches, but there's also a 24.5 inch and a 27 inch which you can swap between. Now you could use this screen exclusively for PC gaming, after all that's where you're going to make the most of that 240 or 480Hz, but you don't have to just use it on PC. Forget the crazy high refresh rate for a second. Well, you can still enjoy a console like the PS5 or Xbox and get that 4K quality, inky blacks and glossy finish, plus it still supports HDR and VRR. Now this is where I play my PS5 Pro and it looks incredible. I'm not going to deliberately buy an inferior screen just because I cannot use more than the 120 FPS. I'm going to use it for every other feature instead. Now I don't know if many of you will use a monitor like this for movies or TV shows, but there's really no reason not to. It's 4K, it's got HDR10 support, and the picture quality in this thing is nuts. I flicked through a couple of movies and TV shows just to see how good it would be, and to be honest it's just like watching it on a small TV. Unfortunately though, there are no speakers built in, so you do need to use a headset or some external speakers, but it looks good at least. And if you're worried about burning, as that is the biggest question I get on these OLED monitor videos, don't worry. You could use this all day and you're not going to instantly burn in your screen. Now by default it's got OLED burning settings which are all switched on, which I just suggest leaving these exactly as they are, but it's also got a Neo proximity sensor that you can enable. This basically means that the screen will automatically go black when you step away from your desk, and that's what is built into this little sensor on the front. You can customize this in the settings too, just to get it right for you. Plus, even with all of these settings, it comes with a 3-year warranty which also covers burn-in. So again, if that was your biggest concern of going for an OLED, I just wouldn't worry. Okay, just like with other ROG monitors, you still have a similar UI menus that you can jump into and tweak your settings. Just tap the joystick looking button on the back and we've got things like image settings, where you can adjust the brightness and HDR settings, gaming for things like VRR, shadow boost and game presets, as well as features like the crosshair on screen if you play a lot of FPS games. Now if you're on PC, there's also the display widget center, which is where you can update the firmware, adjust the burn-in settings and basically access everything you would normally access on the OSD. But it's a neat little way to do it and it's a little bit easier as well. And if you are on PC or swap between different devices, you'll be pleased to know there is a KVM switch as well as a USB hub. But something I didn't mention earlier was the stand and its flexibility. So we get the full movement up and down to adjust the height, we can rotate it around, swivel and tilt it, so you should be able to get it just right in your setup. Now if you followed me for a while, you'll know that my current monitor has been the LG XG32UCWMG, which is also a 32-inch 4K OLED, but this one has a matte finish rather than glossy. And I know a lot of you asked to see a side-by-side of these two, so here you go. And in my opinion, the ROG looks brighter, the colours look better, and the finish of the screen is definitely nicer. And it's for those reasons that I will be swapping to the ROG once this video is done. For me, the ROG just ticks all of the boxes that I want from a monitor right now. Okay, then you might wonder how much these monitors are going to cost, and this might actually surprise you, because you can grab the exact one that I have here, the XG32UCWMG for $949, or the little brother version that comes with 165Hz at 4K for just $799. And you know what, that is not a bad price, and is actually slightly cheaper than the previous models that we had last year. Now I would say if you're looking for a glossy WOLED monitor and you want a 32-inch 4K and up to 480Hz, this is the only one that you can go for. It is, for me at least, the best OLED that you can buy right now. And the fact that you can play 4K at 240Hz or dual mode it to 480Hz is incredible. Plus, I just prefer the glossy screens. I've got the same on my phone, my MacBook and my TV. They're all glossy and they look so much nicer than a matte finish. So yeah, this is my new monitor and I'll be using it on my PS5 Pro and PC, which is perfect timing considering the Battlefield 6 beta is this weekend. But what do you think? Anything that you would add or remove from this screen to make it perfect? Now drop a nice OLED in the comments and I'll give you a thumbs up for staying right till the end. And if you did enjoy today's video, check out this video next. Well, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and follow me everywhere. Until next time.